this week we heard the fundraising numbers from some of the top candidates. Bernie Sanders released his numbers. I think it was 500,000 or so unique donors, 900,000 or so unique donations, $18 million if my memory serves. Beto and Kamala Harris came out with numbers that were, I don't know, in some instances half that. Kamala Harris, I think, raised $12 million, though, but not about half the amount of donors, unique donors. Beto did not release how many donors, just how many donations he got. What's your take on all this? I mean, I'm of two minds. There was nothing worse for me when it became sort of standard for people to talk about the box office numbers of movies. Like, that seemed to be irrelevant, but politics is a little bit different, and particularly when you have a race this big, the amount of money that's being raised right now is a signal to other big donors, and or it's a signal to the rest of us as to how much durability these candidacies have going forward, because in many respects, this is going to be a war of attrition, isn't it?
Well, it is. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that, obviously Bernie Sanders is going to have enough money to go forward. There's no sign at all that his fundraising is in any way going to be impeded over time by money. I mean, that much is clear. The rest of them, I feel like, first quarter of the year before the election, when a big field like this, it's less salient than it would have been, than it would be a year from now, say, if their fundraising is it totally dried up, then obviously they can't continue if that happens. So the thing that bothers me about this, the box office side of it, is that it is so early. And what that says to me, and it bothers me a lot, that the press sort of puts, this is the invisible primary, right? It's what they call the invisible primary. And I feel as if the press is always putting its, the media is always kind of putting its thumb on the scales with the way that it covers people. And there's certain narratives that build up that are really hard for these candidates to overcome. I get it. It's part of politics. It's the way our modern political system works. But I kind of hate it because I think that, it's unfair as people are out there trying to find their feet on the trail. They're trying to connect with voters in a more personal way before the thing gets really big and it's all just one big televised event. And I feel like it's unfair to all of them. And, my feelings on this are obviously colored by the fact that Elizabeth Warren, who is, the person I think is out there presenting the biggest ideas and the one who's kind of, more than anybody else, sort of offering up an agenda with a lot of detailed plans that I think any of the other candidates are going to be grappling with, whether she's in the race or not. And I feel like it's kind of unfair to sort of grade her on the money, on the box office, when she's really playing a very different game than everybody else is. And she took some heat this past week because it turned out that her financial advisor, her campaign finance advisor, quit because she was refusing to take money from big donors, and she didn't want to do those phone calls and do all that hustling for money with the rich people, as they do. And, it's probably hurt her fundraising to do that. And it also, though, it sort of feeds into this media narrative that, she's failing because she, doesn't have the money, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's kind of unfair this early because I think that all of these candidates, they're out there, at these small events talking to people and trying to get a sense of what the people want and also trying out their ideas. It's like a comedian, right? Going on, doing open mic night or going on the road and playing in small clubs to try and hone their act. And for everybody to be, complaining because, some of the comedians aren't getting lines around the block for their open night act, I just think is kind of wrong. So, that's where I sit. And granted, my view on this is kind of colored by what's happening to Warren, and it makes me, feel a little bit bad because I think that she's kind of getting the short end of the stick on this invisible primary so far.
Yeah, I mean, I had wished to a certain extent that she had used that a little bit more, and I think she tried that, there's a lot of folks out there, I think, who would be very pleased to hear that she, campaign finance chair wanted to walk away because she won't go for big donors in that way. I think that's much to her credit. I agree that there's this, but the thing is that theoretically, this should not impact her because she's not going for those big donors. Like these numbers, it seems to me, they function for Bernie because they basically say, like, we're going to be competitive throughout this entire race. This is not going away. We have broad-based support already. Come in as the front runner. For Beto and for Kamala Harris, these numbers are part of that silent primary where they're trying to convince big donors, you can invest in me because I will be the anti-Bernie candidate, basically, right?
Right.
And for Elizabeth Warren, she's not going to take that big money anyways. So the real question is just how long can she stay in the race? How can she run a campaign? And part of it is going to be a function of how well she does in Iowa and how well she does in New Hampshire.
Right.
And I got to bet that for some of those Iowans and some of those New Hampshireans, Hampshireites, that the idea of her finance chair walking away because she's not going to take big money, that's going to be worth more votes than the idea that she's raised $12 million or whatever it is in a quarter. I think that's going to be the case. So it's interesting that the money means something different to all of them in many respects. And,
yeah, that's true.
And I will say this, too. That's why I'm surprised that Joe Biden's not in this race yet, because theoretically he cannot start raising money. He has no apparatus to push back on some of the issues that are coming up for him. And, I can see waiting till the end of the quarter. So you jump in at the beginning of the quarter, you start to raise your money. So you have more time to raise that money. But we shall see. I mean, it's going to be a rather long year and a half, and then it could very well be another very, very long period of time. No rest for the weary, Digby, but I really appreciate your walking me through this stuff.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks, Sam.
We didn't even get a chance to talk about how the president can't say the word origins, but maybe we will pick up on that next week. Heather, have a great one.